Hi, my name is Joy Knepp, and I've been a glass artist for about 15 years or so. And I got my first start here at Touchstone, taking a glass bead making class. Since that time, I've taught my students when I taught school how to make beads, and I've been an instructor here at Touchstone and continue to do my own work. So I'm going to be demonstrating a bead tonight that I came upon the design for a few years ago when there was an exhibit that I was involved with at the Pittsburgh Glass Center. The theme for my pieces was Aboriginal art. I was really interested in all the dots and the colors of the desert and the colors that they use in their art from Australia and how that translated into the glass that I make. So I came up with some of these designs that you can really see the influence from the Aboriginal art with the designs and the shapes using the dots. Beyond that then, I started to encase the dotted beads with clear glass and press it flat to give a more distorted dot design, which that really kind of took my eye. I really enjoyed that. And from there, went on to add, okay, more is more, and started to add a little texture to the outside of the beads as well. I really like how the layers of glass are trapped inside and then a little bit of texture on the outside to give it a nice depth. Then a little bit last year, I was at the Tucson Gem Show. I found these dyed silk cords that I just love the colors, and they reminded me of the colors of the desert. So that led to some of these beads here that kind of pull those colors, and that's what I'm going to make tonight, is a bead very similar to this. So the torch we use at Touchstone is an oxygen propane torch. We have kilns that anneal our glass when we're finished. And the type of glass that I use is called soft glass or a soda lime based glass. And each glass has a coefficient of expansion number, which is basically how fast or slow the glass melts with heat. And the kind of glass I use is called 104 glass. Some of it comes from Italy, like Murano. There are other companies, though, that also make the 104 glass today. And this is some are Chinese, some are from America. Some of the glass that you see here is transparent, you can see through, some is opaque, and then you have some that are kind of translucent. They're kind of a cross between transparent and opaque. And some of the makeup of glass strikes to a different color once it's been heated. So these glasses look like they're like a very light amber, but when the heat hits the glass, it turns to either a dark red or a dark orange, and then that color stays permanently. It doesn't turn back. So the glass I'm going to be using tonight are these colors, some corals and ivories. This one is called copper green. So all glass, when you add the chemical to make the color, it's metallic oxides from the earth, the same as ceramic glazes. And so this green has a lot of copper oxide in the green to give the glass that color. And I'm not sure what all the chemical makeup of this one is. It's one of those striking colors that gives a nice variegated ivory tans and dark colors. This is a burnt sienna and ivory. And ivory with the burnt sienna, or with the coral and the copper green, there'll be some reactions with the glass that just comes from the chemistry of when they melt together. And then I'll be using some clear glass to go over top of everything. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, wearing my protective didymium glasses. Oh, and when I'm done, I'm also going to make some little head pins. These are just glass that's melted on the end of a copper wire. And this is with some of the copper green. You can see some of the reaction that comes in that glass from the copper oxide. And then when I make the pieces, I'll put them together kind of like this, where there'll be a pendant that I'll have a loop at the top that I can hang on that beautiful dyed silk cord. So that's what I'm aiming for tonight. When you come and take a class at Touchstone, you will learn everything from how to light the torch. That's one of the most important things. And of course, safety is of utmost consideration. Being that you're working with sharp glass and hot fire, you know, you need to be aware of those things. So the first thing, I've already pulled some fine stringers. These are just real thin pieces of glass. I call them my little paintbrushes. So I need another one in this burnt sienna. So I'm gonna do that first, and I'm gonna heat the end of my glass, which I'm easing it into the flame slowly, because the glass I use, if I just put it right in the flame, would have a temperature shock and it might explode. So we don't want that. So I just ease it into the flame a little bit till I can see that it's getting hot on the end. And then once it gets a little bit of red, I know that I can just stick it right in the flame without it having thermal shock. So I'm heating the end of this glass, and it's the longer I hold it in one place, it will get like honey. It will slump quicker and quicker once it starts to melt. So I'm just turning it slowly with my hand to build up a little pea-shape hot glass so that I can pull a stringer, so I have a little paintbrush to use when I'm decorating my bead. So I've got a nice little pea shape here that's nice and hot, so I'm going to use some pliers and let it cool just a tad and pinch a little bit to pull a stringer. The faster I pull, the thinner it would get, so I'm kind of pulling it slowly. I don't want it too thin. And then the glass will cool enough until it will just stop pulling, and then I know that it's done. So I'll heat that end to break it off, and I'll sit that down, remembering that that's still warm. I don't want to just pick that up for a while. And I already have my other stringers made. So the first step of this bead is I want to make a coral base, and this is a mandrel made of stainless steel. It's dipped in a clay-based material that will keep the glass from permanently sticking. So the first thing I need to do is heat the steel so that it's hot, and that way when I heat the glass, it will stick to the steel. So I want to just ease it in the flame here until it starts to heat up. And now I can see it has some red on there. And by the way, my glasses I'm wearing block out all of the yellow part of the flame. When I put the glass in, you might see yellow in the flame, and my glasses block that out, so I can see what's happening in the blue part and know when my glass is getting hot. And of course, the glass changes colors when it's hot, so then you have to remember, if it's not one of those striking colors, it's going to turn back to that original color that it is. And while you're working with glass, you have to kind of use your imagination to remember what color the finished bead will be when you take it out of the kiln. So now I have a fairly nice size pea shape again, hot, and I'm going to turn my glass perpendicular to my mandrel, touch it to my mandrel, and wind the mandrel away from the glass and add some glass to the mandrel. And that will be my first little footprint for my bead. That's going to be one side. I need to make a nice long cylinder shape, so I'm going to put another one over here on the other side, and those are going to be the two ends of my beads, of my bead. Now I just need to fill in the rest of this with glass. So that determines what length my bead is going to be. So now I'm just going to wind on some glass. Till I get to my other end. This glass needs to stay warm, so I have to keep in mind that one end might cool before the other, so I have to go back and reheat the other end so that it doesn't get too cool. If it gets too cool and then it is reintroduced into the heat, it will crack and shatter again. So I have to be aware of that. As the bead gets bigger, I have to keep remembering to heat the glass and give it a little heat love on both sides. So first I'm just aiming for a even cylinder-shaped bead. Glass wants to be round, so I overcompensate on the ends because when it melts in, it might make a sharp point on the end, so I'm aware of that, and I overcompensate a little extra glass on the ends so that that doesn't happen. Just basically adding a little glass to the low spots. So that's probably plenty of glass. So I'm going to melt that in so it's nice and even. And I'll use my little brass marver to flatten it. I like the brass because it's cold. The metal pulls the glass and really flattens it nice. I also use graphite to help shape the beads. Some of the paddles are graphite, some are brass. And I'm going to add just a little glass to that low spot there. Again, I got to heat it a little bit to make sure it's not too cool. That should be good. And I'm gonna tilt the glass a little bit. Of course, gravity can be your friend and your enemy with glass and heat, but I want the glass to come down and make a nice edge and not get pointy, because glass always wants to make itself round, and I don't want it round, I want it to be a nice edge. So I'm gonna melt that down there, and then flatten it like that, and then turn it sideways like that. And the same on the other side. And that's the first step of my bead. Next, I'm ready to start decorating my cylinder with some patterns of dots. So I'm going to start with an ivory glass rod first. Turn my flame down just a little. So I just heat the end, touch, let it burn off, touch, burn off. Made it to the other end. And next, I think I'll go for the copper green. Sometimes I have to go back and give the dots a little heat so they don't pop back off. If I didn't make a good enough connection to touch them to the piece, they can pop back off. So I got that good, ready to start the copper green ones next. So I think this color is actually called Canyon de Chelly. I think it's a Creation Was Messy kind of glass, a Chinese glass. It's really cool though. Love that color. Variegated tans. Keeping in mind to leave enough room for the fourth row, which is going to be the burnt sienna. And that's my patterns of dots now. So I'm ready to next melt these in. With glass, decorating glass, you can keep the bead. I could have kept this as a bead and let the dots be popped out and textured, or you can melt in. So you can make glass be sculptural or more like paperweight effects where you're trapping colors inside of other colors. So it's like clay, there's a million possibilities of how you can work and manipulate the glass. Here at Touchstone, a lot of the classes will focus on a particular technique in glass, and so you never get bored because there's always another technique to learn. Okay, so my next step is to encase. I'm going to add some layers, I guess stripes of clear glass on this bead, and I'm not going to have them touch each other. I'm going to leave a little space in between each stripe, because once I encase the bead and then flatten it, I want some of the color of the bead to navigate between those stripes up to the surface of the bead. So again, I'm getting my rod preheated. This is just transparent clear, which when you get this glass, when I heated that up, it has, when they make the glass, it has a little scum on the end, and so I'll have to pick that off. Stick that in the water, so it wouldn't make like little bubbly looking marks on my glass. Now it's nice and clear, there's no little bubbly things on there. Okay, so I'm going to start on one end and put a little row right on this end. And then I go to the other end. And now I'm just going to continue to make some stripes, not exactly right next to each other, but a little space. So here's a next ring. And when you're working with glass and beads, you have to learn to use both hands. So I'm left-handed, so I hold my glass in my dominant hand and my mandrel in my non-dominant hand, but yet knowing that I have to be able to turn the glass mandrel at the same time as adding glass with the other hand. So both hands simultaneously is very important. So I'm just going to do one more thicker stripe in the middle. So I have 5. My 2 on the ends, I'm going to pretty much leave them go, but I'm going to add a little more glass to the next 2 and the one in the middle so that it will become more of a football shape instead of a flat cylinder. Now I think I'll just add one more row to the middle glass, and then I'll melt in the glass, the clear. know, I need a little bit more on this one yet. Probably use about this whole clear rod on this bead. It takes a fair amount of clear to make this bead. That's better. So now I've got my 5 stripes on there, so now I'm going to turn up my flame a little bit and melt those in. When I melt them in, I'm concentrating the heat on the top of the disc parts that are sticking up. And on one side, and they'll start to collapse down, and then the other side. Kind of heating in between those rows of glass so that they melt in and some of the color underneath will navigate to the surface. Okay, I'm going to be grabbing a tool over here. This is just a curved graphite tool, marver. As my glass gets hotter, it gets redder, and that's how I can tell the temperature of the glass. And I hold my tool right up to eye level so I can see if it's what shape it is in there. So I'm aiming for that football shape. And you can see some of the color that I didn't cover with clear glass is coming to the surface. You can see the dark stripes. Next, I'm going to just go ahead and put some more clear on here because I want a little bit of distance between the glass color and the clear when I flatten it. I want there to be a little bit more clear glass between the outside edge and the inside. So again, I'm going to just put some stripes of clear on here. One close to the end. And pretty much the same place I put the other stripes, actually. So my glass rod's getting smaller and smaller, but I can still, you know, when it's suddenly down to a couple inches, then it starts to get too hot. My hand gets a little too close to the flame, but you'd be surprised at, you know, how close you can get to the flame before you start to feel the heat. But then it gets a little too close, a little too hot. But I've just put a little bit more on. I'm going to add just a little bit more clear to a couple of those stripes yet. And I got to pinch that one off again. meld this in. I want my glass to go more to the end. I aim it to where I want the heat to go, the glass to go. Because again, I don't want those pointy ends for a bead. Use my graphite this time. Sometimes my hand gets tired, so give the other hand a little help. And now really heat the middle. I'm going to flatten it a little bit in the middle, my football shape, because when I squeeze the glass and flatten it, I don't want it to pop out super round. I want it to be more of a ovally, flattened shape, pillowy shape, I guess. That should be good. This is the tool I'll be using to flatten my glass in that pillow shape. It's a brass smasher. So I'm looking for the color, the reddish, the orange, little dull orange first, till I can see that it's all over, heated in an even way, because if I heat one end more than the other, it'll flatten more on one side than the other. So it's got a nice overall glow. I think that should work. So I turn it this way, look straight down, and squeeze. And then flip it over and squeeze. And then I look at it this way and see, what I like to do is then take it this way and kind of give it an edge, give it some edge. So once I put that cold brass on, I don't know if you can see those little ripply lines that the glass it makes. Those are called chill marks. So I don't want those on my bead. So I want to heat them off, but I don't want to change the shape and get it that hot. So I'm going to go right to these jets on my torch. I learned this trick from Barbara Becker-Simon, a master glass bead maker. And I'm like, what? You put glass there? And it's usually don't put any glass near those jets. But when you want to take chill marks off, works really well to put them right in those jets. A couple of swipes. And I think they're just about gone. So that's my basic bead. Of course, I like more is more, so I like to give it a little texture on the outside. So first I'm going to take my favorite copper green and turn up a little. When you control your flame, right now I have a little more oxidizing flame. If I add more yellow, then I've got a reduction flame. And once I put this copper green on, I might give it a little reduction flame to give it a little bit of a reaction. But I'm just going to add a wavy line. This is where you paint with those little paint brushes. And we'll end it right there. So heat that in a little bit, melt that in. And then I want to use this, whatever this color is, Canyon de Chelly or the variegated tan glass. I'm going to put another one of those on as well. So I'll start this one about right here. Do some wavy lines kind of in between the copper green. Get those flattened down a little bit. And then last, I like to add a couple little transparent poked dots so that it traps a little light in the glass. So I use this little poking tool. And I'll look for a couple of spots where I think I might want a dot of either the green or the light rose quartz color. So heat this little spot here and push in a little hole. It's just so I know where I'm going to put my dots, and that little bit of like air that I'm pushing in there will stay in there like a little bubble, and it will trap some of the glass. So I think I'll use the green on this side. I think I'm going to use green on both sides actually, because I used a good bit of the copper green, so I think that will go well with the copper green, this transparent green. So I'll just see where those holes are, and I will just go shoop, put a little dot there. One there. One there. This one got a little small. I'm going to add to that one. And I think that's good on that side. So on this side, so after I put a couple more dots on this side, that'll be a wrap for this bead. And that's the end of the bead. I just want to let those cool down a little bit and give my bead all over some nice love and heat. Make sure it didn't get too cool while I was putting those dots on and fooling with that, so it doesn't crack on me. And then it's ready for the kiln. The beads will go in a kiln that's about 955 degrees, and they'll stay in there for at least a couple hours, and well, all night really, until the kiln cools down. And then that removes all the stress from the glass. And then in the morning, take the bead out and you're ready to remove it from the mandrel and make it into jewelry.
Hi, I'm Ed Eberhardt. I've been doing glass for 3 years now. I started at Touchstone Center for Crafts back in 2017. I came here to work in the kitchen and just kind of fell in love with glass. So I'm gonna do a little demo here. I'm gonna try to make one of these cactuses for you. Start my torch up here. This is a propane oxygen major torch here. And the glass I'm going to be using is borosilicate. It gets up to about 1200 degrees plus to melt. And yeah, here we go. I have a little prep work here that I did. I just melted a couple things down and formed it. Now I'm going to heat it back up again and shape it when I get to the temperature. Now the trick here is to get the glass hot enough so you can work it, but not too hot so it falls apart on you. It's almost like honey. It just kind of wants to go downward, so you have to fight against gravity to keep it in the shape and maybe let it cool down if you get it a little too hot. You can do that by using tools to pull some of the heat out and shaping, or just taking it out of the heat. So now that I have this kind of up the temperature, it's glowing here. I'm going to try to shape it a little bit. What I'm trying to do for this piece here, I'm going to make the planter for one of the cactuses. So this will be the bottom. I'm going to try to get it looking like a pot here. You always have to keep your hands spinning, so like I said, with the heat and the gravity, it wants to stay a ball, but it will fall south, kinda. I'm gonna take it out, let it cool for a second, and try to shape it a little bit here. Cool back down, you gotta go back in, heat it back up. All right, so now I'm going to heat this top up here, and I'm going to try to push in and give it a little indent, give it a little more shape. Right. Now I'm going to take another color. This is kind of a gray here. I'm going to put it on top of that. And then kind of do like a little layer of dirt between the pot and the cactus. And you want to get both pieces of glass equally hot, so when you stick them together they kind of fuse into one piece. If there's a little bit of difference in the heat there, they might not stick, and that could crack and then mess up your end product. Connect this in here. Move that. Clean this up a little bit. I take that off because it got a little too hot, so that might show some impurities in the glass, because if it gets too hot it'll show bubble marks. For some different colors have different elements in there, so at different temperatures they burn off and make the glass dirty almost. I'm going to push this down here a little bit, melt it in. Give it a little push. And there we have that. I'm going to put this in the kiln and start on my next part. I'll use the kiln. It's set to hold the glass so you can do other things and it doesn't have to worry about stressing being out of the temperature and in the normal temp of the room. Might cause it to crack also. So now I'm going to work on the cactus part. I have some green here, and green's a little tricky because it's easy to burn the color out and you end up with the dirty glass. It just doesn't look good, especially if it's the center part of your piece. So what we're going to do, we're going to try to melt this down, get it almost into a blob, and then shape it, add a couple dots to it, and then we'll attach it to our other piece there. Just got to take your time, let it heat up, don't fight with the glass, let it get up to temperature, and then it's a little bit easier. Do what you got to do. Now that we got this pretty much warmed up, it just kind of wants to be like honey there and just fall, so got to keep it spinning. Use the heat right. Sometimes you want to take it out of the heat so it can cool down a little bit, keep its shape. We're getting there. You have to remember you kind of want to heat the part you're working up on, and then to melt you want to go down a little bit to the next part so it melts and kind of all comes together. Kind of messed that up because I stopped spinning there, so I'm just going to heat it back up and fix it. About good. Take it out of the heat, let it cool for a second. Mash it here. Now we had a solid rod like this. We melt it down, flattened it. Now I'll heat it back up and give it a little more shape. Give it a little flatten, pull it. I'm going to try to make it a little oblong shape, so we'll heat up one end a little bit more. Let it cool for a second, keep it spinning so we keep the shape. Go a little pull here, go back in. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this to another punty here. So I made it a little too big. You try to keep this up and just slowly stretch it out. Put a little twist on it. Alright, now we're gonna decorate. Remove that. Clean that up slightly. We have this. We use that as our cactus body. I have a blue and white here that you can mix together. You take 2 different colored rods and then you melt them into each other in kind of a pattern. And then you heat that up and give it a little twist, so you end up with something like that. And I'm going to kind of just dot this on my, my green cactus. So. Turn our flame down because we're working a little smaller, so make sure both parts are equally warm. And we're just going to start decorating once it gets a little warmer. Touch it on, pull it off, give it a little twist. And then you could melt that down if you want it to, but since it's a cactus, I'm going to leave it on there and give it a little bit of that texture, almost like a spike from the cactus. Switch it over, finish this other side. Add a couple touch-ups and then we'll put some on the outside here. Over, finish the other side. Careful not to heat your colors up too much because they'll burn. But you melt them in. Alright, so just a little bit. We have our cactus shape kind of with some green spike dots kind of. Now we're going to take that, put this in the kiln for a second, and then we'll get ready to transfer to our pot we made earlier. This has been sitting in the kiln, now we're going to have to heat it back up. Now that we're glowing, we'll give it a little extra attention on the front here. So we know it's warm all the way through. And our work surface is up to temp also. I'll let that cool for a second. Get this out. Actually, I have to take this off of here. So you're going to want to use a smaller punty or just a clear piece of glass of a smaller diameter. And then we're going to connect here. Disconnect here. Oh, seal wasn't quite good enough, so better happen then than when we're trying to transfer. Now we'll heat the other end up, make sure to heat everything else up so it doesn't lose heat and shatter on us. Take some of this clear off, clean this end up. Keep that warm. We'll take this out. Oh, that was supposed to happen. A little more off of here, make it a little unsturdy if we left it on. So we're going to melt this down until we get a nice round and heat it, and then heat this up, and then we're going to connect them. If all goes well, it'll be one piece here. Take them out of the same flame, let them cool for a second, and then connect them. Actually, I think you're supposed to connect in the flame and then take them out. Connected, I'll give it a little cool, straighten it out. Let it cool. There's some time in between when it's still cooling down where it's still very pliable and it will bend, or the slightest move will mess up the whole work. So the trick's really finding a balance to all that. Knowing your glass, knowing your torch, the heat. I'll clean this clear up here, where we're left with just our bottom that we made earlier. Now we get all the clear, we pulled some of that color out. Clean that up a little bit just because it might be burnt. I want to heat all this up, and then I'm going to press it flat so it'll sit, and then push a little divot into it so it doesn't rock and it can stand on a table. You gotta remember to keep everything warm so nothing breaks on you, shatters. So close to the end. Now they're hot. Oops, sorry. Just give it a little push there. Oops, sorry again. Heat this back up again, one more push, then we'll heat it back up and see if she stands. Heat it up maybe one or two more times. More surface area. Awesome, so that's standing. Let's put a little indent in there, prevent it from rocking. Be sure to keep everything warm. Now it's the tricky part because I don't want to push too hard or I could break my connection because the glass is just a little weaker there, so. Get it extra hot right where we want to push it. Give it a little tap. Heat it back up one more time and I'll press it and disconnect and put it in the kiln. Maybe another time just to be safe. Going for as flat as possible. Just kind of want to use gravity to help you here. It's gonna rock. See, that does it. Alright, so we're going to take this off. So be careful because if you have cold tools, got a full heat, cause something to break. Warm your tools up a little bit, get this warm. And melt and remove. Piece here. Awesome. Now we got a little practice. I'll put that in the kiln so it can slowly come down to temperature, cool off, and then overnight that'll be room temperature and ready to touch. So